A while ago, I made a Twitter post about an architectural phenomenon that I've always found extremely beautiful: the connection of two buildings, or sections of a building, by some kind of bridge. Whether it's purely decorative, or a passage for people to walk through, or even public transportation, it has always been profoundly appealing to me. The replies had a number of interesting suggestions on why this might be so appealing. For one, that it symbolizes a kind of overcoming of atomization, as if the buildings are reaching out for one another and achieving connection. Or, in the case of the passageways, that it has a unique kind of intimacy, a small space hung in midair that immediately leads you to imagine what it would be like to stand there. Others suggested that it evokes the utopian idea of a city in the clouds, an infrastructure in the sky, that also leads you to imagine a different kind of life, one in which you move from space to space without having to touch the earth. I think all of those have some truth to them, but I decided to make this video because, while reading a relatively little-known text by the German Romanticist Friedrich Schiller, I came across another way to look at this. Perhaps this is a stretch, but I immediately thought of this architectural phenomenon after reading one of his writings on beauty. In a set of letters known as the Kallias letters, Schiller characterizes beauty as the appearance of freedom. So, what does freedom in appearance look like? Well, in order for an object to appear free, it must appear to be unconstrained by external forces, and rather than expressing the effects of something external acting upon it, it must express its own internal form. To me, the most helpful example is Schiller's comparison of the movement of a workhorse compared to the movement of a palfrey, a more lightweight kind of horse suitable for riding over long distances. Quote, "Place a workhorse next to a light Spanish palfrey. The weight which the former has become accustomed to pulling has so robbed it of its natural movement that it trots just as tiredly and clumsily as if it were still pulling a wagon, even when it is not pulling one. Its movement no longer springs from its nature, but rather reveals the pulled weight of the wagon. The light palfrey, in contrast, has never become accustomed to exerting greater effort than it feels like exerting in its most perfect freedom. Each of its movements is an effect of its nature that has been left to itself. This is why it moves ever so lightly, as if it weighed nothing at all, the same area over which the workhorse moves as if it had feet of lead." In other words, the movement of the workhorse appears to be weighed down by the external force of gravity, whereas the palfrey gallops in a light and graceful manner, such that the inherent form of its movement is expressed in spite of gravity. In other words, the movement of the palfrey appears more free, and therefore more beautiful. And this applies not only to movement, but shape as well. He gives the example of a duck. Because of the way it widens at the bottom, a duck's shape appears to be weighed down by gravity, almost like the earth is pulling down on it, just like the movement of the workhorse, and therefore its form appears less free and hence less beautiful. The duck may still very well be cute or endearing, but not beautiful in the way that Schiller understands it. In the duck, matter appears to constrain form, whereas the light-footed horse, despite weighing more than the duck, appears lighter because of its form appears graceful in spite of its matter. And so, where the duck appears like matter determining form, the lightweight horse appears like form determining matter. This view applies not only to animals, but to man-made objects as well. Schiller applies the same principle to vases. Quote, "A vase, considered as an object, is subject to gravity, but the effects of gravity must, if it is not to deny the nature of the vase, be modified, i.e., specifically determined and made necessary through its specific form. Every effect of gravity on the vase is contingent and can thus be abstracted from the vase without losing the essence of the form of the vase. Thus gravity functions outside of the nature of the thing, and appears as an alien force. This occurs when the vase ends in a broad belly, because here it seems as if gravity had reduced the length of the vase and instead had given it breadth. In short, it seems as if gravity had prevailed over form and not form over gravity. So Schiller might consider this vase to be more beautiful than one that ends in a broad belly, as rather than being pulled down by gravity, it almost appears to point upwards towards the sky, and expresses a certain form that appears purposeful, internally coherent, and not constrained by external forces. If it's not yet obvious how I might apply this to the architectural phenomenon mentioned above, Schiller's example of the bird will probably make it obvious. Quote, "A bird in flight is the happiest depiction of matter dominated by form, of power overcoming weight. It is not unimportant to note that the ability to overcome heaviness is often used as the symbol of freedom. We express freedom of the imagination by giving it wings. When we want to describe Psyche's freedom from the bonds of matter, we let her soar above the world with the wings of a butterfly. Clearly, gravity is the bond of every organic being, and a victory over it is thus considered a good depiction of freedom. Now, there is no better depiction of something conquering gravity than a winged animal, whose inner life, autonomy of the organic, determines itself by its opposition to gravity. And I think we can apply this principle to these bridges that appear to be almost suspended in air, without being directly supported by columns. This appearance of flight is made even more powerful by the fact that the object is made up of heavy material such as concrete, as the architectural form prevails despite the heaviness of its mass. It could be described as graceful concrete, in which form prevails over matter. In other words, it is freedom in appearance, and hence beautiful. Let me know if you think there's something to this approach, or if you think that it's a reach. I'd also like to point out that this is only one part of Schiller's writings on beauty, and I also must admit that he probably would have hated brutalist architecture. Regardless, I hope you found this short lesson on Schiller to be interesting. And now I'd like to thank my patrons, who are as beautiful to me as the movement of a Spanish palfrey. 404 Error Just Undo It, Andre Oliva, Ben E., Blue 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 Blueberries on Desire, Blue Blue Blue, Celsius Enjoyer, Daniel Swing, Evie Rosk, Eric Owens, Felon Mask, Francois Yue Wu, Harbin Moths, Hong Kong Aesthetics, Ian Fowler, John D. Pagani, Katy Perry is John Benet Ramsey, Kelly Huiskamp, M. Lim, Marius Labontu, Matthew Dominic, Matthew James, Max Bendick, Nathaniel Lark, Nathaniel Owen, Abominards, Paul Windfer, PDXJ Morris, Polecat, Post Elvis, Procyon, Rachel Ann, Radical Q, Robert Fear, Sky, Stax Murner, the Frida Kahlo Enjoyers Club, The Joker from 2016, Tor Larson, Victor Redco, Wentao Sui, Yesterday's Rice, as well as all of these beautiful patrons. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.